Today we're going to be discussing the different fields of biology. And biology itself is a very large field of science. We're basically studying anything that's alive or really closely related to living organisms. So within biology, there's a lot of different fields, and we're going to talk about some of those today. Biology covers basically from the molecules that are responsible for life, with organic compounds and macromolecules, all the way up to the planet as a whole. So there's a lot of things in between when you're talking about going from microscopic to the entire planet or the biosphere itself. So biology has a lot of overlap. There's also a lot of interconnectedness between the different fields of biology and different fields of science. One of the first things we look at when we're looking at biology is we're looking at the connection between technology, science, society. That's the science and technology are kind of interwoven, in that a lot of times we have a development in one which leads to an advancement in another. And a classic example of that would be where technology creates a microscope. And so before the microscope, we don't have microbiology. But Leeuwenhoek gives us the microscope, and suddenly we now see that there's a whole world of microscopic organisms. So this advancement in technology leads to a whole new field of science. And another example would be our understanding of genetics, right? So we understand genetics, and then that leads to all the technological advances that we have now with genetic and engineering and genetic screening and those types of things that never existed. So technology and science are very much hand in hand. Like I said, discovery in one leads to a discovery in another. It enables scientists to pursue things that they normally or perhaps in the past would not have been able to pursue. Having a scanning electron microscope and allowing us to look inside the structures that are inside the cell allows us to have a new understanding of what goes on inside a mitochondria or what goes on inside the chloroplast. So things we couldn't have done 100 or even definitely 200 years ago, we're now able to do because we can peer inside, those organelles and the structures that make up life and that make life possible. So that's kind of a key important thing there just to kind of touch on before we get into the actual fields, is that it's just recognizing that science and technology, especially all fields of science, are deeply rooted and deeply connected to technology. So one of the first fields of biology I want to talk about, and one of my personal favorites, is ecology. Ecology is the study of the world around us and how it's affected by all the living things in it. So ecology is kind of like this study of where we live. And really, if you look at the Greek of ecology, it's ekos, which is house. So it's the study of the house, the study of the place where we live. So we look at all the interconnected relationships between organisms, between animals, between producers, between the nutrients in the soil, all of those different things. We're looking at life and how life aids life in other systems, how predator-prey relationships can impact ecosystems. We look at all the different biogeochemical cycles that are happening in ecology. It's a very, very large field. It covers a lot of different things. But I think, for students, it's great because it's something that you can see. You can observe ecology. You can look out your window and you can see, birds and grasses and trees, and you can see those types of interactions and things like that. So it winds up being a very hands-on science. It's very familiar to us. We look at a lot of different things within that field. In addition to all those things that I mentioned, all the interconnectedness between and interdependence between organisms, we also, you would include the global impact that humans have. So the things that we do and how that impacts the earth, our expansion, deforestation, conservation efforts, all of that will be kind of lumped into the field of ecology. So it's a very, very large field. And like I said, one of my personal favorites. Another field, very closely related to what we started with, is biotechnology. This is based on the ability to read, write, and edit the genetic code. So we're talking about genetic engineering. Soon this field may have the ability to edit and replace genes, especially disease-causing genes. So, we've identified a lot of genetic disorders, and we've gotten to the point now through technology where we can go in and say the problem that's occurring, or the disease or condition that's occurring, is because of this section of this gene right here. And so, the hope is at some point that we can actually have the technology to go in, isolate that gene, change the sequence, and change it back to a healthy gene. And therefore, that would eliminate the genetic disorder, because most genetic disorders are treatable, but they are incurable. And they're incurable because at the very basis of it, the gene is what's causing the problem, right? It's the gene is mutated, and that's causing the protein to be slightly different. And when the protein's different, that's where the disease results from. So again, that's a situation there where if the technology catches up to our understanding of the science, that may open up a whole new field when we talk about genetic engineering. That field, though, as I mentioned, that field raises a lot of moral and ethical concerns. There's a lot of people, who, should we be editing genes? Should we be changing things? If nature made it this way, then should we be editing the gene? And so there's a lot of back and forth on that. And that's one of the reasons, too, why that field is kind of slowly emerging, because depending on where you are in the world, some places things like that are allowed, and in other places they're not. So it's kind of tied into, we talk about genetic engineering or stem cell research and some of those types of things. So it's a slow moving science that, like I said, in some parts of the world will be several decades ahead of other parts of the world, just because of the way that the systems are set up and what they're allowed to do. But this field of biotechnology, not just genetic engineering, this would include biomedical engineers, microbiologists, biomanufacturers, so using our understanding of biology to produce goods and services and things like that. Another field we look at in biology is the field that basically is responsible for organizing all of life. And so we sometimes refer to this as the tree of life. And so within this field, we're trying to kind of put together all of the different organisms and living things that we have. We use computers to help gather information about all the living things and put them into a single tree of all life. So we want to know how organisms evolved, where they showed up, when they showed up, who they're most closely related to. And so this field is just kind of trying to organize life into a one, where we represent all of life in one space. And that's a really, really difficult task to do. Another field that we have is where we look at the evolution of diseases. That is a developing field that deals with the evolution of viruses, bacteria, and other disease-causing organisms. These viruses, these bacteria, they continue to evolve and infect people. So, we've got people who are on the front lines fighting these diseases and trying to understand where they're coming from. In this field, we look to see how do these germs change, how do they react to their surroundings, and ultimately, we're trying to keep people healthy, right? So we have all these things. They're not trying to make us sick. Really, most of these things are just looking for a home. Bacteria, when they get inside our bodies, they're not trying to make us sick. They're just looking for a place where they can grow and divide and have a bacterial colony. The result of that is it usually causes problems for us. So in this field, this would include things like an infectious disease specialist, a virologist, or a disease ecologist. Again, we're trying to understand where these diseases and viruses come from and how to deal with them. Another big field would be the field of genomics and molecular biology. This is where we're going to be studying the DNA of different living things. In this field, scientists can analyze the data. We're going to use powerful computers and learn about the growth and development of living organisms. So this also gives clues to the history of life on Earth. So as you can see, as we're kind of going through these, there's a lot of overlap. We talk about, building a tree of life, and then in the field of genomics, we're looking at, using powerful computers to understand DNA. That's really going to help us in building a tree. So, even though they're technically separate fields, a lot of these fields are going to have a lot of overlap, and they're going to be working with one another, right? They're going to be working side by side to help answer some of life's biggest questions. So this would include things like a molecular biologist, a biochemist, an epidemiologist. All of those would be working in that large field of genomics and molecular biology. Whatever the field of biology is, they're all very broad, and that's really kind of a testament because life is so diverse, right? Because we have things all the way down to microscopic single-celled organisms, and then we're going all the way up to the entire Earth itself. So that would only make sense that we would have a really wide range of fields that all of these things can fit into. And we've mentioned some of the big ones today. We haven't even really mentioned all of them. We just kind of touched on the major fields of biology that you would see. But no matter what the field is, they're all kind of working under the premise of understanding life and understanding the world around us. I'll see you next time.